Hello everybody and welcome to Week 5. We're going to talk about some quarterback changes, a couple free agents you might want to add, and since we've played 4 games already, we're going to look back at some of my previous picks and see how we did. Now, 4 games into the season, we've already seen 9 teams make a change at quarterback. One of those I highlighted last week with Jacksonville and Blake Bortles and how that impacted Alan Henderson in the passing game in Jacksonville. Another team I want to highlight this week is the Minnesota Vikings. Teddy Bridgewater's coming in and making his second appearance this week. Now, he played very well last week, but since he is a rookie quarterback, a lot of times the coaches want to have a conservative game plan, not throw the ball too much downfield, but a lot of screen passes or passes to the running backs or tight ends. The biggest beneficiary to that was Jarius Wright. Now, Wright's a player who caught a lot of screen passes and turned the plays into big yards downfield. I look for him to continue to do that. Last week, he had 8 catches for 132 yards. I think Bridgewater will continue to look his way. Another change of quarterback that we all know about is here in Tampa with Mike Glennon. Mike Glennon led the Bucs to an amazing comeback win last week against the Steelers. I was really impressed with his poise in the pocket and his ability to spread the ball around field. Now, Mike Evans got hurt in the game and he's going to be out for a couple of weeks. But Louis Murphy stepped right in and didn't miss a beat. Now, they just signed him that week, but Louis was in camp with the Bucs all preseason, so he was familiar with the system, and him and Glennon had time during the preseason to work together on those second-team reps they were getting. Now, Louis had 6 catches for 99 yards, and I think he can continue that type of production, but I also look for Austin Seferi-Jenkins to get involved in the passing game. Now let's talk about some free agents you might want to pick up. I already talked about Minnesota, but I want to talk about the running backs there. Jerick McKinnon had a big week last week with 132 yards rushing. Now, when the news about Adrian Peterson broke a few weeks ago, everybody rushed to pick up Matt Asada, and Asada's played very well. In fact, he had 3 touchdowns last week. I think the Vikings will continue to split time between the two, but if you watch both of them play, you'll notice that McKinnon is by far the more explosive of the 2 backs, and I think as the season progresses, he'll separate himself in that competition and get more of the playing time. The next player I want to talk about is Travis Kelce. Now, last week I mentioned how tight ends just seem to be growing on trees, and Kelce's another name you can add to that list. Last week he had 8 catches for over 90 yards and a touchdown. I think as Alex Smith becomes more familiar with him, they'll continue to build on that and his production's going to go up. The last player is Miles Austin. A lot of times players in Cleveland tend to fly under the radar, and the Browns had a bye week last week, so Austin, chances are he's available in your league to pick up. His last 2 games, he's had 2 touchdowns, and I think he's going to continue to get a lot of looks in the red zone and a lot of those passes until Josh Gordon comes back from suspension. Lastly, I want to take a look back at some of my previous suggestions and see how those worked out. We've played 4 games now, and when we look back, fantasy football is not an exact science. We try to make predictions based on previous performances, upcoming matchups, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. First, let's start with 2 guys that I think are working out pretty well. The first is Carlos Hyde, the rookie running back in San Francisco. Through 4 games, he's got 2 touchdowns, so he's well on his way to that 8 to 10 touchdown range that I predicted before the season started. And week to week, his production's going up. He's seeing more carries and more time on the field as he becomes more familiar with the NFL. The next one is Ahmad Bradshaw. I highlighted him a few weeks ago when I thought the Colts would make a move at running back. It's pretty clear now that the Colts aren't really looking to make a move at running back. They're just going to split time between Bradshaw and Trent Richardson. But Bradshaw has gone on to become a top 5 fantasy scoring running back in most formats, in large part due to his ability to catch passes from Andrew Luck. He's one of Luck's favorite targets inside the red zone. So now let's take a look at 2 guys that weren't exactly on par. The first one is Christine Michaels. I highlighted him before the season started as a potential sleeper candidate as a backup to Marshawn Lynch. Michaels got hurt in the last week of preseason, and Robert Turbin came in to be the backup for Lynch. Turbin's played well through the first 4 games, and I think he will continue to be that backup to Lynch. So you can pretty much forget about fantasy production from Christine Michael unless there's some drastic changes in Seattle. And the next guy is Jason Witten. I highlighted him as a buy low candidate a couple weeks ago, but it's clear he's not going to be that much of a focal point of the Cowboys' passing attack. You couple that with the fact that there's a ton of tight ends available out there, you can get much better production elsewhere from the tight end position. So at this point, I recommend steering clear from Witten. So that's all I've got now for Week 5. Thanks again for watching. Matt McGuire, and remember, #ThePlank on Twitter if you have any questions.